If you're going out each and every time to a sales presentation and you're going out to put on a performance for your clients, something that's not truly you and you're trying to perform, then falling off your game is quick because you're trying to memorize everything. You're trying to figure out, okay, if they say this, I say that. And there's all this stress and overwhelm that's on you to go out. You don't show up as your authentic self. You're not there for the same focus, right? So instead of focusing on selling people things, what if you went in there just trying to help them? Hello. Welcome to Outer Spaces, a podcast dedicated to empowering landscapers, hardscapers, and outdoor living professionals. I'm Joshua Gillow. My mission through this show is to create a powerful resource for you, someone who is striving to grow their company well past the $1 million line, but might not have all the tools and processes to do so. Here in Outer Spaces, we are passionate about breaking the chains of small mindsets and helping contractors just like you take control of their businesses and their lives. With nearly 3 decades of experience designing, selling, and building six-figure outdoor living spaces, I've made all the mistakes. Starting with $0 in my pocket, and through the grace of God and a ton of hard work, I now own multiple businesses that afford me the time with my family and the lifestyle I've always dreamed of. So join me as I share what I've learned along my journey, strategies, and other contractor success stories right here on the Outer Spaces podcast. Now, let's get on with the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Outer Spaces podcast. This is your host, Joshua Gillow. This week, Mr. Wes from Synced Up is back with us, and we're going to talk about how to flip the script when your sales presentation is falling apart. You know what I mean? We've been there. I know I have, where things are all falling apart, and man, I don't know how to salvage it. This week, we're going to dive deep into how to solve that problem. Enjoy. Hello, welcome back to the Outer Spaces podcast. This is your host, Joshua Gillow, and today, Weston Zimmerman from Synced Up is back with us as we tackle this next thing that we run into, this next struggle we run into as salespeople, right? It's how to flip the script when your presentation is falling apart. So, Wes, welcome back on.
Thanks, man. It's good to be back with you. I am having a blast on these conversations.
You're always awesome to talk to. I love it. So I know that you've been doing this a long time and you haven't always been with Synced Up. Obviously, you have created that, but you've been in the field, you've been out, you've been the face of the company, you've been in sales, you've been all of these things. And what I'd love to talk today about is how do you handle the situation when your whole presentation, your sales presentation is falling apart? Like, man, I've had that a couple of times over my career where I'm like, I went in with a certain mindset that I was going to walk into a house and everything was great and peachy. And I get in there and maybe the husband's just not on board or had a bad day, or you get in there and someone doesn't show up or the kid won't stop screaming. The whole thing is falling apart. The dog is running around, just barking like crazy. And it throws you off, right? You don't expect those things. And so how do you flip the script when those presentations, when you're just trying to keep your shit together in your head? Have you ever had that happen before?
Yes. I think if you've been alive and have tried to sell something, you've had that happen before.
Yeah.
I think probably the thing that my brain goes to in this thing of like, well, why does it fall apart? Like, what creates that sensation within me that is saying this is falling apart, panic, Yeah. And I think what it is lack of authenticity, meaning if you are pursuing utter and complete authenticity, well, then you can't fall apart. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just, well, you respond with authentic truth. Well, I don't know, or let me do some research and find out for you, or like, no, I can't do that for you, or I could do this though. Like the greater degree of authenticity that you are embodying or taking on when you're in that sales conversation, the harder it is to push you and make you lose your balance.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. You're so spot on with that. If you're listeners, if you're going out each and every time to a sales presentation and you're going out to put on a performance for your clients, something that's not truly you and you're trying to perform, then falling off your game is quick because you're trying to memorize everything. You're trying to figure out, okay, if they say this, I say that. And there's all this stress and overwhelm that's on you to go out. You don't show up as your authentic self. You're not there for the same focus, right? So you can be pushed, to Wes's point. Just one little finger can push you off your game because you're there to put on this big show like it's the big time and you're some circus actor, right? So that's not what it is. What I'd love for the listeners to think about is instead of focusing on selling people things, what if you went in there just trying to help them? That's it.
Yeah.
Both are 4-letter words. Yeah. Sell and help are both 4-letter words, right? So when we think about it, when we're coming from a different, genuine point, an authentic goal of helping and serving people, it doesn't matter if the dog's barking or those kids are crying or the husband's late. It doesn't matter because you're there to help. It's a completely different motivation.
Exactly. It's like if they ask you a question you don't know, well, then you're able, because you're in authenticity, you're able to just say, well, I don't know. Let me find out. And like a client will appreciate that truthful answer so much more than some for stuttering. You're obviously kind of reciting something that you're from your half-baked memory, or like if you're going into that sales call with some sort of script in your head from your latest sales training, you're trying to execute it perfectly, take the principles from that sales training you just took, but then be your authentic self.
Yep.
And what if the client asks a question that's not on the script? Then what?
It's true. It's true. It's very true. As we train our students coming through, we do have a script as a framework. It's important to have a framework, a foundation, but flexibility has to be built in. If you sound like a robot reading script verbatim and memorizing it, you're going to feel like a robot to them too. The authenticity, that helpful nature is going to be marred. It's not going to work. So we have to go in.
If you're the contractor taking like Josh's sales training, or like if you're taking some sort of sales training, don't pay attention to the words verbatim. Pay attention to the principles and embody the principles in your own words if you have to.
Yep.
The script is maybe helpful, give you some ideas, but embody the principles, not the words.
It's important, exactly, to have that framework, understanding what kind of questions need to be asked earlier, later, how to frame those questions. But again, it has to feel like it's you and not like you're a robot for somebody else. That's an important part. So if things are falling apart, you realize like, wait a minute here, my last couple of, I guess here's another great way, nice indicator, Weston. If you're going out to meet with clients and you're knocking on the door and your heart is pounding out of your chest, you're probably thinking you got to put on a show. Yeah. When you get to that door and you knock on the door and you're excited to meet the client and can't wait to help, it's a different kind of if your heart's racing a little bit, it's because you're excited versus scared. Yeah. There's a big difference.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just thinking about it like, okay, we fear what we don't know. Yeah. That's another basic human truth. So if your heart is, I just want to normalize, your heart probably is going to be pounding the first couple times you do it until you get comfortable. Yep. So if your heart is pounding, you probably are in the mentality that I'm putting on a performance. Not good, but practice. Do it as many times as possible until you're no longer, do it quickly, do the learning, pay the price of admission as quickly as possible to get past that point where it's just the fact that I haven't done it before that's making me nervous instead of the scared of what the client's going to say that's making me nervous.
Or the thought that I need to sell this project. I know how much debt I have. I know the bills. I've got payroll coming, and you get to the door and you're like, the entire world rests on my shoulders right now. I need to sell this client. That is you're not going to show up your best with that mentality walking, even if it is the truth. If you step back and say, no, what are we doing this for? If truly you're doing it to help people, to empower them with incredible backyards so that their friends and family can build memories for a lifetime back there. And you're there to listen and not be the one putting on this just crazy dramatic show. Things change when you come in to just be a good listener, because you don't have to have all the answers. You just have to have questions and honestly be curious. And when you are, the client's answer, remember the 80-20 rule, right? 80% of the sound should be coming from your client's face, not from yours, right? So you got to be asking great questions. And that's what we teach in our courses on how to ask great questions. And when you do, you let them unlock it, because you know what? So often, Weston, we get into the situation where we assume so much, especially as men. We don't want to ask questions. We already know all the answers. We do this every day. So we get into the situation, we already know what Mrs. Jones is going to say. So we're just going to finish her sentence for her. And the problem is 99% of the time, you're dead wrong. Assumption will always make an ass out of you. So why not ask a question and just leave that question mark hang in the air and let her answer it back or him answer it back, right? Then you're like, wait a minute here. I didn't see that coming. When you mentioned that you wanted a water feature in the backyard, first thing I thought of, well, I have this package where we can do a pondless water feature with 3 waterfalls and a gurgling urn. Maybe you can throw some fire in there. It'd be really cool. And she's thinking, no. I just want some little feature on my patio that I can plug in on a Sunday morning when I drink my coffee and watch the sunrise. So completely different. They're both water features, right? But if we go in assuming that we know better because we're professionals and this is what we do every day, and they're just dumb homeowners who don't know what to do, we're going to kick ourselves in the butt constantly. So that's where everything starts falling apart when you start assuming things, when you start coming into that and saying, I know better than you, as opposed to being that detective. Hey guys, we've already had our discovery call. We have a sense of what's going on. Based on what you told me so far, it sounds like you want a water feature that you can sit next to and watch that sunrise while drinking coffee, Mrs. Jones. Is that right? She's like, yeah, exactly. And Mr. Jones, you mentioned that you wanted an outdoor kitchen because your buddies get together every Thursday night, smoke cigars, and watch the game. Did I get that right? Yeah, absolutely. And Mrs. Jones, you mentioned that you have you and your girls play bridge, and you need a place that you can get out underneath some kind of a roof structure somewhere that whether it rains or whether it's sunny, that game is not going to be canceled. That's every Friday night, right? So you need a place in the design that you can do that. Am I correct? Yes, exactly. That is amazing. You listened. Okay, cool. I know that goes against the 80-20 rule because we're talking, but we've already asked those questions on the discovery side. So when we're sitting with them at the table, they're thinking, wow, this guy, a man that listens in general, right? But we're not assuming that we're going to take all of our own ideas and just look at it and be like, yeah, I don't like that idea of a covered area for the bridge thing. I don't care about the outdoor kitchen for her husband. And I certainly don't care about a place for her to sit back next to that water feature and drink wine for. That's because we don't do those things. We build patios. We're contractors. This is what we do, right? It's that mentality that's keeping you down in the 30% or less closing rate.
Exactly. Or the smaller projects, or the commodity level projects.
The price fighting projects.
Yeah. When you're asking questions, you're also dispelling the notion of the client's emotional barrier of, I'm getting sold to. And now suddenly it kills that vibe, It
does.
And the other thing is to your point about selling, the place to play bridge or the place to hang out with my buddies and barbecue, as opposed to an outdoor kitchen and a patio with a roof structure. Yes, that is what you're executing at the end of the day, but you have to be connected to the value or the service or the problem that you're solving. And I'll use an example of a job that Tussie did recently. Actually, we highlighted it on our last Contractor Summit event. And that project, it was probably, I'm going to say a $600,000 to $700,000 home in a nice development. Probably the nicest home on that area might have been $1.5 million, maybe $1 million, $1 million to $1.5 million, I would say. So regardless what you do to the place, it's not gonna really exceed that value, right? Or that price in terms of equity. But the two people that lived in that house were grandparents. And they spent almost $1 million on that $500,000 property to do. I'll start off with the one column first, the practical column: swimming pool, outdoor kitchen, blah blah blah, on a patio, on and on and on and on. But you know what they were buying in their minds? The place that their grandkids come to.
Yes, and that's priceless.
That's what they were buying in their minds. They didn't care that the money they were putting into it, they'd never get back out.
Yep.
They didn't care that it was a swimming pool or a hot tub, whatever. Like, they wanted to create the space that their grandkids would want to come to, not be begged to come to.
Yep. And I hope you're listening to this, because Wes just dropped some major gold right there. If you're thinking they're just buying features and benefits and functions, you're 30 years behind the curve. People are buying these things because of what emotional benefit they get. And his example was, so the grandkids come back. We have the magnetic place that everybody comes back to. And for those investors, they're not just homeowners, they're investors. The rest of their life, they want to know that everybody wants to have the parties at their house. And for them, that is priceless at the end of the day. Because the hearse doesn't stop at the bank on the way to the graveyard. So they want to invest as they can now.
Yeah, exactly. And it doesn't work that way for every single client on the face of the earth, but for this segment of buyers, it does.
It does.
Meaning this thing of, I want to be the place that the grandkids come to, trumped everything else.
Yep.
I'll never get my money back out. What's it cost? It trumped everything else.
Yep.
Now, I know at the end of the day, they have to have the money and the means to pull that off. But
of course,
even bring that example all the way down to a $10,000 project, it can still be true.
100%. I have example after example of exactly that with clients where the house is worth 250 to 500,000. They doubled that house and they know they're not going to get it back out if they sold it the next day. That was never the plan. They wanted a place that everyone would come to and it'd be the magnetic space. Even some younger families think, I want my kids to be home instead of out in somebody else's house when they're teenagers, my teenage daughter, my teenage son. I want to make sure that that's my place. So everybody comes after soccer practice to my house, but I need a place to do that. Right. So all of a sudden that's their driving force. So now the price is, everyone has a number, Wes, you know that. Everybody has a number. But at the end of the day, that number is flexible based on what they get emotionally for it. 80 to 90% of what we sell is emotional. Only that 10 to 20% is logical. So we have to make sure that we aren't coming in as logical the majority of people in our industry are men, so logical men, and trying to solve problems because every single nail we see, we have to hit it with the hammer, that it's always the same way. We've got to slow it down and start asking those questions, because when we do, we start uncovering some of those emotional sides. And you talk about how to become distinct in your market. You don't have to buy new trucks, new shirts, better website. You just need to slow down and ask better questions. No one else in your market's doing it yet. Our goal here at Yes Express is to get our entire industry up to 75% closing rate or higher. That is our mission, to do that, because I know that the men and women in our industry work way too hard for way too little. And if they just slowed it down and get deeper relationships with these clients, they would sell more with less clients and have more time with their family and live a much more balanced, fulfilled life. I know that. They're chasing leads now. They're running around trying to just make ends meet because that's what they've been taught. We need to unteach that and realize that 30% closing rates in our industry is not acceptable. I talk to students that come and book calls with me. They're at 10% closing rate. Wes, that is going out to 10 projects and getting one.
I don't know what you're. Yeah, the first thing that pops into my head is you have a vetting and filtering qualifying problem.
Huge. There's none. Yeah. I mean, and that's okay. Yeah. That's okay. Again, the IRS gives you your EIN number, says this is where you pay your taxes. The rest is up to you to figure out. And so many men and women, hardworking men and women in our industry are great doers. They're great builders. They're craftsmen and craftswomen. They're incredible at what they do, but they don't know much about business. And they just want to be left alone to build cool stuff. But unfortunately, when you sign up for a business, you sign up for all of this stuff. So why suffer and work and go after 10 projects a week, spending all that time robbing it from your family and your team, all to bring one home? That's like going hunting and bringing enough home just to keep people starving. We need to come up with a better strategy if you're a hunter. We need to be able to go out there and realize, okay, if the average in industry is 30%, so 3 out of 10, how can we get it to 4, 5, 6, 7? I'm saying we're going to get it to 7 and 8 out of 10 minimum. We know it because we're doing it here in Pennsylvania. We're doing it here up in the 90s consistently over years. It's possible. Yeah, it is. It makes me think of one of our customers, one of our Synced Up users that I just went to go visit in New Jersey, John Valenta. I had him on the podcast. I went down to visit him and had him on the podcast. I just went out to lunch with him last week, by the way. So you did? Yeah. That's hilarious. Awesome dude. Yeah. Well, I asked him, like, hey, I didn't even know the answer. I just asked him something about what his closing rate was. And he said 10 out of 10. Yep. And I was like, he's really good. What? Yep. But he's been spending a lot of time and investing in sales training. He's working with Sandler. Yes, he has. So he has been. What he told me was my clients earn the right to get a proposal from me. I don't earn the right to dance in front of them in their yard. Yep. They earn the right to get a proposal from me. No, I don't give proposals to everybody. Yep. And that's how he gets his 10 out of 10 close rate, of course. And the point is the work is in the qualifying and the process. And then again, when you are when you are actually getting to the point of submitting that proposal, yes, of course, all of the sales training that you're providing is absolutely essential. But you're not going to do a 10 out of 10 close rate, or even an 8 out of 10, or possibly even a 5 out of 10 without some qualifying and vetting. Like if you're doing zero qualifying and vetting, you're probably going to be sub 3 out of 10. Yep, that's exactly right. That's what we're seeing as the average across the industry. Yeah. We've been doing this now almost 5 years of speaking to all different size companies, and it is typically around that 3 out of 10. And I say because that used to be my closing rate, dude. I was like 3-4 on a good week 5. That was it. Like that, I never saw north of that until I started to actually train and understand what vetting and pre-qualification was. And I felt icky in the beginning about the idea because I'm thinking like, man, that means that I'm going to have to tell people no, and I'm going to elongate the process. People are going to get cranky about it. The opposite happened. The opposite happened. When we slowed the process down, an initial call comes in, they get a questionnaire, they fill that questionnaire. It's our next trigger to move forward with our discovery call. All 3 first parts happen in the office. By the time we're done with that discovery call, we know everything about what they want in that project emotionally and logically. And on top of that, we know what their budget is, a realistic budget. And if it's not realistic for what they want, we give them a graceful exit and say, we're not a good fit. Right? That happens all before we burn any gas.
You know, one thing I've seen on this is clients genuinely appreciate it when you arrive at the point where you're like, okay, this is not a good fit, and you tell them as soon as possible. Yep. Like the example I often give is Tessie Landscaping. One of the things they started doing was in their sales process to qualify and vet people is we developed this project planner is what we called it. And pretend you're building a truck on GM's website or Ford's website. It's kind of the same thing. You're building your outdoor living space on this web tool where you're picking what you want. It gives you a price range for each thing and the description and pictures and all of that. And we just like what I learned is like people really appreciated that because the people that had a $10,000 budget and a $100,000 vision, they didn't know that
exactly
until they saw that project planner, or unless you're going to tell and get to the point where you can tell them based on what they're telling you manually, verbally. But that project planner was a place that allowed them to make that discovery and educate themselves without the awkwardness of pouring your heart out about your vision for your project and then finding out that it's 10 times what you thought it was going to be.
Yep.
You know, that's really awkward. It's really embarrassing. And it really sucks as a client to say, oh my goodness, I had no idea. I am so sorry. There is no way we're going to be able to move forward. I'm sorry for wasting your time. Like nobody loves that conversation. Nope. So the faster you can help them, educate them in your online presence, your content, your sales process, your qualifying process, to allow them to just well, I can tell you what it looked like after we implemented that project planner process to our qualifying process was, they would call in, pay a consultation fee, book the consultation, tell you what they wanted, everything, and then they got to the project planner, and 10 minutes later they call back and say, you know what, I didn't know, I'm sorry, but let's cancel the consultation. And we're like, okay, no problem. You know, we just solved a massive problem. We saved their time, and we saved our time.
Win-win. Yep, because you know it's one of those things where just because they called out of 8 billion people on the planet, just because they called you, doesn't mean that you have to facilitate some song and dance for them. We talked about that earlier. Exactly. Going out and putting on a show for them. No, that's not what it's about, because you're not just wasting your time if you're going out to an unqualified lead. You're not just potentially wasting your time. You're also wasting theirs. They've got to schedule, child's people taking care of their kid, babysitting. They got to get both of them home. We always have both decision makers at meetings, right? Both of them home. We have to have all these things in place. And there's a thing going on there. So if you have no idea what they want and you're just going out, you're screwing them too. And you're wasting your time. So why not set up a win-win for both of us? And if they have a $10,000 budget and we find that they have a $100,000 vision, we need to have that conversation before we waste time driving there.
Exactly. And the thing is like, it is true that a lot of the airtime in our conversations has been about saving your time as the contractor or the salesperson. Yep. Yes, that is all true. But if I can be in the mindset of, I don't want to waste the client's time if they're not going to be able to afford me. And your conversation is framed around that. Like, look, Mrs. Jones, the less games you play with me and the more quickly and clearly you tell me what you're looking for, the quicker and more effectively I can tell you exactly what's possible and what's not possible. And we can decide whether there's a way to do something together or not. And I don't want to waste your time. Like, I don't want to lead you on into a 3-meeting process, you thinking this is all going to go down, and then you discover at the last final stage that it's not. I don't want to waste your time in that way. So, that's often the conversation that I use to try to get a budget or to highlight the fact why I need a budget is, it's pointless for us to go through all this discovery and estimating and proposal work if we don't know what budget we're shooting for. Because if I propose a Lamborghini budget for you and you had a Impala budget, well then we're so far apart that it's not going to work.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And we're also preserving our clients' integrity, because think about it from the client's perspective. If they finally have $10,000 saved up and they're like, well, I want to do something in my backyard. I want to get my grandkids back, all of this emotional drivers for this buy. And you burst their bubble like 17 steps into the process after they're like, wow, I really like Wes. He's a good guy. The design is beautiful. Yeah. I love all of this stuff. We haven't talked about budget yet, but I assume God told me I have 10,000 to spend that'll cover it all. And then at the end, you show this design, keeping your fingers crossed that $100,000 is going to magically appear in a tree next to the house and they're going to be able to pick from it. Right. It's like, but the problem is, after all that, they probably showed his design to friends and family and all this, and now they have to realize and wrestle with the fact they can't afford this. That shatters their integrity. They're like, that guy's a complete asshole. Like, why would he do that? Why wouldn't he tell me up front? Why wouldn't he do the humane thing and have a conversation with what my budget can give me and not just pretend like it's not there? It is so important. So we can go on for days with this, Wes, but, when it comes down to it. But ultimately, the goal of this episode is about how to flip the script when your presentation's falling apart. And the way you do that is simple. If you feel when you get to that door and you're knocking on the door that your heart's racing because you got to put on some kind of show, then you're coming at sales from the wrong side. If you're 100%. Even worried about that entire presentation falling apart, you're coming to sales at the wrong side. You're trying to put on a show, and your clients are going to smell through that, and you are not going to be very effective. But when you go into those same exact situations and you are like, look, I am here. You might just say this to yourself before you get out of your truck, before you walk in, or your car, before you walk into the house, and say, God, I'm here to serve. Please guide my thoughts and my wisdom in my heart so I can serve this client to the highest level, even if that means it's not a good fit for us. Mm-hmm. And when you go in with that, you go in with no pressure. You go in just to have a conversation with two other human beings and solve a problem so they can create those memories or get their grandkids back to the house, because that's the bigger mission of all of this. So if you find your presentations are falling apart or you're afraid of that, think about this. Think about which are you coming in with? I have to sell them because I got bills, or I'm here to help them. That's a huge shift in your heart when you go in there, and they will sense that. And that's how you get around this problem. So Wes, thanks for coming on. Appreciate you, brother, as always. And next week, guys, we're going to jump into how razor thin profit margins are forcing outdoor living professionals to rethink how they sell. It's not COVID anymore, Wes. It's not like it was before, where we were taking orders. Like, we couldn't get enough time in a day to even answer the calls because everybody had money and everybody wanted what we had. Well, COVID's over. The reckoning is back. Now we're back to pre-COVID, in some places below pre-COVID. How are we going to manage them? Are you taking your old sales process systems, or however the hell you used to do it in the past, and trying to roll forward with it? Because if you are, you're probably losing, because the world's changed. And if you're not changing with it, you're going to be behind. So, guys, thanks for listening. Can't wait to share that with you next week. Thanks, Weston.
Thank you.